Have you ever noticed how the soul shudders, not when confronted with light, but when it senses the whisper of the abyss? There's a strange hunger coiled within us, a forbidden curiosity that presses its face against a glass of darkness and does not look away. Why is it that we gaze into that which terrifies us most, not with revulsion, but with something dangerously close to desire? This is not mere fascination. It is seduction, and like all true seductions, it begins not with answers, but with a question that bites and refuses to let go. What part of me longs to fall? They told us the good is safe, that virtue is clarity, that the self must be polished like a mirror reflecting all things pure. But what if that mirror cracks, and in its fracture reveals something truer than any surface could hold? What if the impulse to look away from darkness is the greatest lie ever told? There is a sacred violence in our nature, a pulse of chaos we are taught to suppress, but never to understand. And in that suppression lies the seed of our fascination. We do not look into the void because we are lost. We look because we sense it knows us more intimately than any God ever could. Imagine a man standing on the edge of a cliff, not trembling in fear, but gripped by the thrill of the possible fall. That moment, suspended between terror and ecstasy, between self-preservation and the desire to dissolve, that is the mirror of the human soul. We don't fear the abyss because it threatens to devour us. We fear because, in some unspoken corner of our being, we want it to. And yet, this craving remains unspoken, unspeakable, hidden beneath smiles, morals, and liturgies. But tonight, something breaks. A veil is lifted, and what you'll see is not the abyss itself, but the shape of your own longing carved into its walls. Could it be that evil is not something we escape from, but something we contain, like a poison in a chalice we dare not drink, yet cannot discard? Is the shadow not our enemy, but our reflection, twisted, yes, but necessary? Every time you feel drawn to that which disturbs you, every time you replay the moment of rupture, of cruelty, of chaos, something within you is remembering, not just what happened, but who you are beneath the masks. What if the dark is not calling you to perish, but to awaken? So let me ask you, not as a philosopher, not as a guide, but as a voice already inside your silence, how long will you pretend not to hear it? How long will you deny that the shiver running through your spine is not fear, but recognition? There are truths that only the abyss can teach. And once you hear them, you cannot unhear. But beware, what you find in the shadows may not be an answer. It may be your name, spoken in a tongue you forgot you knew. And from that moment on, nothing will ever look the same again. There's a place within each of us that we were trained not to enter, a corridor with no light, no name, only a whisper that grows louder when the world becomes quiet. It does not knock. It waits. And when we are most alone, when our certainties begin to fracture and the masks we wear melt under the heat of doubt, that is when the whisper becomes a scream. Why do we keep returning to that scream, even as we claim to fear it? The truth is this: we are not afraid of the darkness. We are afraid de que ela nos compreenda melhor, do que qualquer luz de me pediria. O lado negro de almaneo e am intruso, ilite o que sobre quando todos veo embora. E por mais que tenemos interlo compromissos, virtudes e ideas herdados, e ele respira sob a terra. Fomento por ser visto. From childhood we are fed stories with good triumphs, where the villain is vanquished and the shadow is expelled. But look closer. Wasn't there always a part of you that watched the fall of the hero with a flicker of disappointment? As if some essential truth had been buried with the so-called evil? This is not madness. It is memory. A memory older than your name, older than your beliefs. The memory of having once been whole, and in that wholeness, carrying both creation and destruction in equal measure. We were not born clean. We were born complete. And to deny our own abyss is to live as a half-being, domesticated, amputated. That is why we look, not to flirt with ruin, but to reclaim what was exiled within us. There are no saints here. There is only the theater of control, performed by souls terrified of their own wilderness. What we call morality is often nothing more than architecture built to silence what still growls inside. But the body remembers. The body keeps a score of every impulse silenced, every rage swallowed, every cruelty fantasized but never enacted. And so we find ourselves hypnotized by true crime, captivated by confessions, drawn to eyes that have seen too much, because they remind us of our own unspeakable truths. We envy those who have stepped into the forbidden, not because they are free, but because they dared. And this envy, though denied, is the most honest part of us. Perhaps this is why suffering fascinates us, not as punishment, but as mirror. We do not seek pain for its own sake. We seek what it reveals. The mask slips when we bleed. The ego shatters when we break. And in that breaking, a deeper voice emerges, one that does not ask for forgiveness or applause, but only to be heard. Could it be that our wounds are the only places where the soul breathes without censorship? That the wound is not the enemy, but the passage? If so, then the abyss we stare into is not a destination, but a door we were told never to open, precisely because what waits behind it is not horror, but truth. And now the question remains, are you willing to remember? Not with your mind, but with that ancient part of you that is always known, the part that shivers when you pass too close to the edge, not from fear, but from recognition. The abyss does not seduce to destroy. It seduces to awaken. It calls because it sees what you tried to forget. The darkness is not outside you. It is what waits when performance ends, when the applause fades, when the lights go out. It waits patiently, eternally, for the moment you no longer fear it, but embrace it. And when that moment comes, you will not fall. You will descend with reverence, like returning to the place you were never truly meant to leave. And perhaps now, as silence begins to form between the words that have ceased, you feel something that wasn't there at the beginning, an invisible thread stretched between what has been revealed and what still remains in shadow. The abyss didn't call you to destroy you. It called to remind you that there are parts of you that were never touched by light and yet still pulse with truth. You didn't look into the dark by accident. You were drawn to what has always belonged to you. And now, even without knowing how to name it, you know something inside you has awakened. There's no way to unsee it now. What once watched you from behind a mirror is now staring into your eyes, not as an enemy, but as a forgotten reflection. The shadow is not the absence of light. It is the presence of what has not been accepted. And in that reunion lies the true liberation. Everything you once fled from, tamed, silenced, now rises not as a threat, but as a possibility. You no longer need to pretend to be whole while hiding half of yourself. And what if, deep down, what you were seeking in every mistake, in every fall, was simply permission to be complex, to be contradictory, to be human? The dark side of the soul is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a continent waiting to be explored. And in that descent, in that return to what was always yours, you discover that the monster you feared was only the part of you still waiting to be loved. The abyss did not devour you. It gave you back to yourself. Now, close your eyes for a moment. Feel what still reverberates. There's a truth hidden in the simplest of realizations. You survived the gaze. And perhaps for the first time, you truly saw yourself. The darkness did not change you. It revealed you. And this vision, raw and untamed, is the first step toward a new existence. A life where you no longer need to choose between light and shadow, because you finally understood. Both are you. If this echo touched something that had long been asleep in your soul, don't let it be lost in the void. Write in the comments what moved you. Share this video with someone else who carries nameless questions, and subscribe. but not out of habit. Subscribe as one who lights a candle before the unknown, because here we do not run from the dark. We listen to it